Let's talk about the composition panel icons. And those are these icons located right here at the bottom left of the composition panel. The first three we're not going to talk so much about. This is always preview this view, which when we get into more complicated projects, we'll talk about. This is the primary viewer, again, more complicated. Immersive environment, if you're working with 360 projects or 180 projects, you're going to mess with that. Those three aren't so important. The next thing, 100%. This is the size of our composition window. Right now, we're viewing it at 100%, which means we're viewing it at 100% scale of what it's going to look like. If I was to blow this up to 200%, yes, it's larger on my monitor, but this is larger than it would actually be displayed wherever it's being displayed. So it's great to zoom in 200, 400% to really look at fine details to when you're compositing or doing animation. But when you're wanting to look at the final project, you always want to be at 100% scale. You can also scale down to things like 50% when you're trying to work quicker. If you need to move through something quicker, you can also fit the window. This is going to fit it based on how big your composition window is. So as I move this composition panel smaller or bigger, it's always going to fit it to the full size of that panel. Now, I prefer to always work at 100%. Next, we've got these grids and guides that help us when working in motion design. The first one is title action safe, and there it is. Now, if you're working in TV, this is a big one. A lot of us have moved away from TV, and these aren't so important anymore. Back in the day, it was important that you always kept titles within a title safe line, which is this one for HD TV, right? SD TV is what these inner lines are, which very few pieces are ever made for SD anymore. In fact, I don't know why these lines are even here anymore. This outside line here is action safe. It's where the footage is safe within the TV guidelines. But again, anymore, a lot of things are put up on the web. There are no safe margins because everything is seen. So this is your title safe. A lot of times I just use a shortcut, which is the comma key that turns it off and on. We also have the proportional grid, and when we set up our preferences, that's what set this up. So I'm not going to get into what the rule of thirds is, but that's what we're set up to right now. And we did that because we went into the preferences and we went into the grids and guides. We loaded that preference up and we said it was 3 by 3. Now, if I wanted to change this for whatever reason, let's say I wanted to change it to 9 by 9. I can change it there, click OK. There we go. Now we've got 9 boxes across and 9 boxes down. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 across, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 down. So it just depends on how you're working and what you prefer to, have these proportional grids set up for you. I love to work at 3 by 3. This tells me that this is a really good focus point. This is a great focus point, another great focus point, a third and a fourth. You can again turn these off by just hitting the comma key. Next, we have the grid, and this is our grid. Helps us when we're working with a lot of detail in motion design. And again, you can go into your preferences and you can change the size of this grid. You can also change the colors of any of these grids. We also have guides and rulers. So if I turn rulers on, you're going to see here's a ruler on the left side and here's a ruler on the top. Now, if I go into my ruler and I just click and drag, I am dragging a guide now. And guides are great when we're designing motion design with a lot of pieces. Like if we wanted text to align, on the left side here, I could move my guide and I could put a line of text here and know it's lined up there and lined up there. I could also drag a guide from the top down and position it here. I could drag another guide here. I could drag a guide from the left again over here. It's really, limitless on what you can do with guides, but rulers and guides are very important in motion design. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and turn these off. Guides are off and rulers are off. Next, we have toggle mask and shape path visibility. So if I was to go back into this layer here and go to my mask tool and just draw a simple rectangle, I can see that mask right now. But if I turn this off, I can't see. I can see that it's being masked here, but I can't actually see the lines of where that mask is. And that's what this tool does. It allows us to see it or not see it. Next, we've got the actual preview time, where we're at in the current time. So right now I'm at 0, 0. I'm at the very beginning of my timeline. I can see it here and I can see it here. If I move forward on this timeline, you're going to see these numbers change here and here. And you can see they correlate. We're at 3 seconds, 10 frames, 3 seconds, 10 frames. I can also click and input a specific time. So if I need to be at 2 seconds and 10 frames, put a 2 there, click OK, and my timeline is back to 2 seconds and 10 frames. Next, we've got take a snapshot. This is handy when we're trying to compare shots, look at befores and afters. So I could click this, and now this show snapshot is highlighted. And so I could say, I could go to my selection tool, I could move this down here. Let's say I want to maybe position it here. I could go back and click show snapshot. That's what it looked like before. That's what it looks like now. Before and now. So this is just a handy feature to preview things before and after and see, kind of go back and forth and see what you like. Next, we have show channel and color. This is if we want to see the full RGB image, if we only want to see the red channel. And you can see here the composition panel is highlighted red to display that. Here's green. Here's blue. Here's the alpha channel. If I turn off the footage, you're going to see, because this Photoshop layer has an alpha channel to it. So we can see there's the alpha channel only. And it looks blurry because if I go back to RGB, you can see there's a glow here on this text. So that's why the alpha channel looks like it's this kind of blurry, weird looking halo alpha channel. And then we've also got RGB straight, which is this. So typically you always want to be in RGB when you're working. You're going to get into things like the reds and the green channels and the blue channels when you're working with color and composition. Next, we've got our resolution. I typically leave it set to auto, but you could set it to full, to half, to third or quarter, or custom. And let me show you what the difference is here. Okay, so if we're on auto, like we are here, you can see there's parentheses around the resolution. That tells me we're on auto. Now, if I go over here to 100% and I go down to 50% scale, now it's at 50% of the size, and it's reduced the resolution automatically to half, because I don't need to see a full resolution if I'm only viewing this at 50% of the size. If I go down to, let's say 25%, now we're at a quarter resolution. Now, if I go above 100% to anything like 200%, it's never going to go above full, because what can it go, above full at? It can't. So anything beyond 100 is always going to be full when set to auto. Now I can leave it at 100% scale, and I can decide to move down to, let's say, a quarter, and you can see how pixelated everything got. This comes in handy when you're working with motion, a lot of effects, a lot of layers, and you need to preview something much quicker. It's going to take, let's say it takes a minute to preview 1 second of motion design at full resolution. Well, if I was to go from full resolution down to a quarter resolution, it may only take 25 seconds or 20 seconds to preview that same stretch of preview. So working with resolutions is very important in motion design, because you don't want to always be working at full and get bogged down with previews that take a lot of time, and it can really eat up your time working in motion design. So you do want to be careful to get into full resolution when you're working with like heavy effects like glows and things like that, because certain effects will not display correctly at a half or quarter resolution. They will look different at full resolution. Okay, so next we've got region of interest. So if I click that, and let's say I've got this render going on here, and I only want to really just look at this area right in here. That's my region of interest, and that's all that's going to be rendered when I'm testing things out. So it saves me a lot of time because it doesn't have to render, After Effects doesn't have to render this entire composition panel. It only has to render whatever I've highlighted here, whatever is important to me. That's region of interest. Very powerful tool. Next, we've got toggle transparency grid on and off. So right now it doesn't matter because we've got full footage behind this text, right? This footage does not have an alpha channel, but if I turn the footage off, and again, this earth layer here, this Photoshop layer has an alpha channel. We saw that when we went to alpha channel here, but it looks like it's just being displayed over black, but it's not quite true, because if I turn on the transparency grid, there we can see it does have an alpha channel and it's over transparency. If I turn the footage on, now it's sitting over the footage, right? So if the footage was to be off screen like this, there you get a better idea of this is the transparency grid. Next, we've got active camera. I'm not going to get into these. This is more when you get into 2.5D and 3D. Same with views. You can set up things where you can look at 2 views here. You can set this to be a top view, a left view. It doesn't really matter so much when you're not working in 3D. So I'll go back to one view. We've got toggle pixel aspect ratio correction. This is not so important unless you're not working with square pixels. Most footage is going to be square pixels, so that doesn't really matter. A quick way to tell is just to click on your footage here in the project window and look up in here, and it's 1.00, that means it's square. If it's anything besides 1.00, it's not square. Next, we've got fast previews. I typically always work at adaptive resolution. This means that if I'm scrolling through my timeline very quickly and I've got a lot of stuff going on, it's going to adapt that resolution, and it's going to down res that resolution so that I can quickly see what's going on. If it determines that my computer needs to down res that to 1/4 or 50%, it's going to do that. You don't typically want to work at off final quality. This is always going to show you the final quality of your work. It can slow your computer way down. So I would highly recommend adaptive resolution. Then we've got our timeline button here. If your timeline is not showing up, you can click this and it's going to pull it up. We've also got the composition flowchart. This is when we're working with nodes. If you like to work with nodes, this is the place for you. This is how to work with nodes inside of After Effects. Not my cup of tea with After Effects, but that's how you get to it. Then lastly, we've got reset exposure or adjust exposure. So if I'm working with a very dark composition, it's hard for me to see things, I can turn this up and I can turn it down, and I can get a better sense of how things are looking by turning this exposure up or down to brighten or darken the composition. I can click this button here to reset back to 0, which is typically how I always work. If I really want to brighten something up, I'm not going to mess here with the exposure. I'm going to go into the effects and I'm going to apply an exposure effect to the footage I'm trying to expose. Okay, that does it for the composition panel icons.